There are battles in history where numbers alone do not tell the story, where strategy, courage, and sheer audacity outweigh size and might. Imagine a sun-baked plain in southern Italy, where the largest army Rome had ever assembled stretches across the horizon, 40,000 men ready to crush their enemy and secure eternal glory. Opposite them stands another force, smaller in number yet vast in cunning, led by a man whose name would echo through history, Hannibal Barca. Here, on the fields near the village of Cannae, the fate of Rome, of the very idea of empire, teetered on a knife's edge. In a single day, the world would witness one of the most devastating defeats ever recorded, a masterclass in military genius, and the near collapse of one of history's greatest cities. To understand the magnitude of Cannae, we must first step into the world of the 2nd century BC, a time when Rome was no longer a city-state but a burgeoning empire, hungry for domination and fearful of rivals. Across the Alps, Hannibal Barca, a Carthaginian commander shaped by the bitter lessons of his father, rose as Rome's most feared adversary. His march from Iberia, across treacherous mountains and hostile lands, had already carved a trail of awe and terror through the Italian peninsula. Every step, every battle demonstrated a brilliance that seemed almost preternatural, an ability to turn adversity into opportunity, to see paths invisible to others. Rome, proud and disciplined, had underestimated the resolve of its enemies. The Senate called forth its legions, amassing the largest army in its history, confident that numbers, training, and relentless discipline would prevail. Yet the battlefield is not conquered by confidence alone. It is shaped by terrain, by cunning, by timing, and above all, by the choices of men willing to gamble everything on a single day. In the summer of 216 BC, near the village of Cannae in Apulia, two armies met, one vast and rigid, the other smaller but fluid, disciplined not by fear, but by an understanding of the art of war as a dance, a trap, a deadly theater. On this plain, Rome would discover that numbers could not always guarantee victory, and that genius, audacity, and courage could defy expectation. This is not merely a story of death and destruction. It is a story of strategy and human will, of a day when the fate of a civilization hung in the balance. Rome in 216 BC was a city of immense ambition, restless energy, and unshakable pride. Its citizens believed in discipline, in the honor of the legion, and in the inevitability of Roman triumph. The Republic had already faced Hannibal in battle at Trebia and Lake Trasimene, each encounter revealing both the skill of their adversary and the limits of conventional Roman tactics. The Senate, undeterred by these losses, convened to raise the largest army it had ever mustered, 80,000 infantry, 6,000 cavalry drawn from every corner of Roman territory. Every citizen who could bear arms became part of this mobilization. Wealthy families contributed, not merely in men but in resources, equipping soldiers with shields, swords, and armor that symbolized not just personal protection, but the weight of Rome's expectation. Their general, Lucius Aemilius Paulus, was chosen not only for competence but for the ability to command an army that spanned class, region, and tradition. Alongside him, Gaius Terentius Varro brought energy and audacity, though tempered by impetuousness. Together, they were meant to lead the army to victory, yet even as the Roman legions marched south toward Apulia, a quiet anxiety hung over the officers' councils. They knew Hannibal was not a conventional enemy. He did not merely fight, he orchestrated, manipulated, and exploited weakness. The Carthaginian general understood that a battle is not merely a clash of men, but a contest of minds, of will, and of imagination. The Roman legions advanced with confidence, yet unaware of the trap waiting for them. Fields, rivers, and the rising sun all aligned under Hannibal's scrutiny. The fate of the Republic, untested against such genius, would soon be tested as never before. Hannibal Barca was not simply a general, he was a prodigy of war, forged in the crucible of Carthage's grudges against Rome. From the icy peaks of the Alps to the plains of northern Italy, he had led men, elephants, and dreams across impossible terrain. Every engagement he entered, from Trebia to Trasimene, demonstrated his mastery of terrain, timing, and psychology. At Cannae, he would reach the zenith of his tactical genius. Hannibal understood the Roman mind, disciplined, predictable, and reliant on brute strength. He devised a plan that was both audacious and elegant. His center would appear weak, deliberately yielding ground. His flanks, strong and flexible, would bend inward like the curve of a bowstring. Rome, confident in its numerical superiority, would advance into this trap, compressing itself against the Carthaginian line. He arrayed his army carefully. 8,000 cavalry on the wings, infantry positioned to envelop, and reserves held in the rear to exploit the moment when Rome overextended. Every soldier knew his role, every maneuver rehearsed in the mind of Hannibal long before the first step of battle. The Roman legions, swelling with pride and confidence, could not perceive the trap forming before them. They saw only the apparent weakness in Hannibal's center, the deceptive retreat, and believed their victory inevitable. What they did not see was the deadly choreography designed to crush them entirely. Cannae lay in the rolling plains of Apulia, a landscape of wheat fields, gentle hills, and sparse woods. To the Romans, it appeared an ordinary battlefield, but under Hannibal's vision, it became a theater of destiny. The Carthaginian army, though outnumbered in infantry, controlled the layout with precision, turning the earth itself into an instrument of destruction. As dawn broke, both armies faced each other across the plain. The Roman legions gleamed in polished bronze, banners snapping in the morning wind. Each soldier felt the weight of expectation, the pulse of history, the unspoken fear that failure would bring ruin to Rome itself. Across the field, Hannibal's men stood calm, disciplined, and ready, their eyes fixed not on the enemy alone but on the space between, the trap that would soon ensnare their foe. For hours, the armies circled each other, maneuvering, testing, and waiting. Roman cavalry tried to probe the flanks, while Hannibal's forces held steadfast. The tension was palpable, the plain seemed to hold its breath. When the first clash came, it was not chaotic but orchestrated. Roman infantry pressed forward into the center, only to find themselves gradually surrounded, the wings of Carthaginian soldiers folding around them in a deadly embrace. By mid-morning, the trap closed. Roman formations, once proud and unyielding, became constricted, compressed by the Carthaginian lines. Panic spread, discipline faltered, and the once unstoppable Roman juggernaut began to crumble. As the morning sun climbed higher, the field of Cannae transformed from an ordinary plain into a furnace of chaos. The Roman legions, compressed and crowded, pushed forward into the center of Hannibal's line, unaware that they were stepping into a masterful trap. The Carthaginian flanks, steadfast and disciplined, began to fold inward, moving with the precision of clockwork, turning the Roman advance into an inescapable cage. Soldiers who had marched with pride now found themselves pressed shoulder to shoulder, suffocated by their own numbers, shields locking with those of neighbors as panic slowly crept into their ranks. Hannibal's cavalry, victorious on the wings, surged around the rear of the Roman army, cutting off any hope of escape. The Romans, who had always relied on discipline and cohesion, now faced the unimaginable, a circle of death tightening with every heartbeat. In the center, the Romans continued to fight, unaware of the scale of the trap around them. Spears shattered, swords clashed, cries of men mixed with the thunder of hooves and the clash of armor. It was a battle without mercy, a moment where courage and horror intertwined. Commanders shouted, but their voices were swallowed by the roar of the battlefield. By midday, the encirclement was complete. What had been a proud, unstoppable army was now a living prison of men, each step inward only pushing them closer to destruction. The Carthaginian lines moved as one organism, unyielding, precise, inexorable. Hannibal watched calmly from the center of the field, his eyes assessing, calculating, knowing that victory was near, yet still requiring patience, for this was not merely a defeat but a lesson in the art of war. Once the encirclement closed, the Roman army's fate was sealed. Panic replaced discipline, courage faltered, and the once mighty legions became a frenzied mass pressed from all sides. The plain of Cannae became a scene of unimaginable carnage, men fighting desperately for each breath, each step, each inch of space, while the Carthaginian forces methodically tightened the noose. The Roman soldiers, burdened by armor, swords, and shields, could not maneuver, could not retreat. Every attempt to break through Hannibal's lines was met with resistance, every push forward met with lethal precision. The Carthaginians struck with brutal efficiency, archers raining arrows into the densest clusters, cavalry sweeping through exposed flanks. It was a slaughter not of chaos, but of calculated genius. Bodies fell in heaps, cries of agony echoing across the plain, while commanders tried to rally men who could no longer see the possibility of survival. The Roman army, so proud, so confident, dissolved under the weight of its own numbers and the brilliance of its adversary. Estimates suggest that as many as 50,000 Roman soldiers fell that day, the largest single defeat in the history of the Republic. The magnitude of the destruction shook the Roman world to its core. Survivors fled in terror, returning to the city to tell of annihilation beyond comprehension. Hannibal's men, though victorious, were disciplined enough to avoid unnecessary slaughter among those who had surrendered. The victory was complete, yet tempered with strategy. Rome must live, for their fear would be a weapon Hannibal could exploit again. The city of Rome trembled as news of Cannae reached the Senate. Panic swept through the streets, temples, and forums, a city unaccustomed to defeat on such a scale. Citizens feared that the Republic itself might collapse, that the foundations of their laws, traditions, and freedoms could be obliterated by the man who had outwitted them so thoroughly. Yet amidst the terror, Rome's resilience began to emerge. Consuls and senators, recognizing that surrender was not an option, enacted radical measures, raising new armies, fortifying cities, and instituting strategies designed to avoid open battle with Hannibal again. Though the shadow of Cannae loomed large, Rome would not yield. Hannibal, meanwhile, remained cautious. His victory, staggering as it was, did not destroy Rome itself. He knew that a direct march on the city would be perilous. The Republic had shown a capacity for recovery, an ability to endure and reorganize. He chose prudence over hubris, consolidating control in southern Italy while the Roman machine, battered but unbroken, began to turn once more. Cannae, therefore, was both a triumph and a harbinger. It displayed the brilliance of strategy, the lethality of tactical genius, and the terrifying consequences of underestimating an enemy. But it also revealed the indomitable spirit of Rome. a city capable of absorbing catastrophic losses and emerging, eventually, stronger than before. The battlefield of Cannae became a legend, studied by generals for millennia. From Napoleon to Clausewitz, military minds would marvel at Hannibal's envelopment tactic, the perfect execution of the double-flanking maneuver, and the unyielding discipline of his forces. Cannae is remembered not only for the scale of death but for the lessons it imparts. It is a testament to the power of intellect over sheer force, to the ability of a smaller, more cunning army to overcome a numerically superior foe. Hannibal demonstrated that understanding terrain, psychology, and timing could eclipse brute strength, forever changing the theory of warfare. For Rome, the memory of Cannae became a crucible of endurance. Though defeated, the Republic learned, adapted, and persevered. New generals, wiser and more cautious, studied Hannibal's tactics, ensuring that future campaigns would not repeat the errors of the past. The defeat, devastating as it was, sowed the seeds of resilience, discipline, and strategic innovation that would later allow Rome to rise as an unassailable power. Cannae also reminds us that history is shaped not only by victory, but by how civilizations respond to adversity. Hannibal's triumph could have ended Rome, yet Rome endured. The genius of Carthage, remarkable as it was, could not extinguish a city whose strength lay in its ability to rise from catastrophe. The plain of Cannae, once soaked in blood and echoing with cries of the fallen, became a symbol. A place where brilliance met bravery, where ambition clashed with tradition, and where the human spirit faced the extremes of mortality and courage. If the story of Cannae captivated you, hit like, subscribe, and share this video. History is more than dates and numbers. It's the drama, strategy, and human spirit that shaped our world. Join us as we uncover more forgotten battles and the lessons they still hold today.